Here's an idea. You're not allowed to sing Happy Birthday. Happy Birthday is the Guinness Book of World Records holder for the most performed song ever. You've probably heard it more than all of those Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Rihanna, and One Direction songs combined. Unless you work in the food court at the mall, in which case I'm very sorry. But for all the times your family and friends have sung an off-key happy birthday to you, or you've sung it to a friend in a crowded restaurant and they've turned bright red, there's probably a lot you don't know, like who wrote Happy Birthday and when. It was Patti and Mildred Hill in 1893. And that you're actually not allowed to perform it in public without licensing it because despite being 119 years old, it's still protected by copyright. Wait, what? I know it's weird, but it kind of makes sense. Sort of. Let's talk about copyright for a second before we decide whether or not Happy Birthday should still be copywritten or copyrighted. Copywrote. Copyright is complex, but the aims are noble. One aim is to incentivize creators for making awesome junk and to protect their awesome junk from people who want to copy their awesome junk but don't have the right. That's where the name copyright comes from, actually. In order to copy something, you need to have that right. That copyright. Another aim is to provide a system by which those works end up available to the public, thus increasing the pool of freely available culture. Once a copyright expires, that once protected work is then in the public domain. Once a work like James Joyce's Ulysses or George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead is in the public domain, it's available to Birdie. And not just Birdie in the club, but like Birdie. To remix, remake, alter, perform, go nuts. You could make a novelization of Night of the Living Ulysses, space rock opera ballet on ice, the movie, and charge $45 for it. Or you could make awesome comics out of classic lit. Link in the description. But once a work is in the public domain, it means the original creator doesn't profit as easily or in the same way from their creation anymore. Which some people, some of whom have a lot of money and very much like their money, think isn't cool at all. Even a little. Not cool! Like imagine if Barbie, Mickey, and Luke Skywalker were in the public domain. There go the revenue models of some majorly successful people and businesses. Not to mention someone would probably make some kind of like terrible Disney-fied Star Wars crossover. Huh? They did what? You have got to be kidding me. That is the stupidest To continually protect these creative works, in the US at least, we've been extending copyright terms, thus keeping these things out of the public domain. Historically, we focused more on their ownership and profitability than on adding to the pool of freely available culture. Originally only 14 years, copyright terms grew to 28, 56, and 75 years. Then, life of the author plus 50 years, 70 years, 95 years, and in some cases, life of the author plus 120 years. For some perspective, if this had always been the case, you could have been around for the annexation of the state of Texas and the copyright on your banjo ditty would just about be expiring. Like Violet and the Chocolate Factory, copyright terms keep growing and growing and growing. Now, Happy Birthday isn't nearly as profitable as Mickey, but it is a beneficiary, or victim, depending upon how you look at it, of the same system. Patti and Mildred Hill put some blood, sweat, and tears into Good Morning to All, the song which gives Happy Birthday its melody. They sold it to a publisher in 1893, who sold his business to another publisher, whose brother took over and then bought other publishers. At some point in here, Good Morning to All was given Happy Birthday's lyrics, and thanks to innumerable and mercurial cultural forces, it became the song we know and love. Happy Birthday to you. Not long after that, in the late 20th century, Happy Birthday's now much larger than it was in 1893 publisher sold for millions of dollars to the Warner Music Group, who still holds the copyright for Happy Birthday until 2030. That's right, the people who own the works for Dio, the Deftones, and Dragon Force own Happy Birthday, until the year Ghost in the Shell standalone complex takes place. Happy Birthday rakes in $2 million a year for Warner, who at one point sought royalties for all public performance, including that by wait staff at restaurants like Red Lobster, which feels just icky. Holding a 100-year-old piece of much beloved and shared culture hostage for something like 0.1% of your annual revenue? HBD has certainly come a long way since that kindergarten classroom in the 1890s. The history and legality of this whole thing is complicated and really interesting, but Happy Birthday seems to indicate that maybe we've tilted towards one of copyright's two original aims. If you want to know more, there's a really great paper by Robert Brown Eyes about Happy Birthday and copyright. Link in the description. But the essential argument is this. At the point that ASCAP was shaking down Outback Steakhouse for protection money like some sort of chain restaurant mafia, were Mildred or Patti or anyone even related to them benefiting at all? And furthermore, is the fact that Happy Birthday is still protected stifling culture in some way? If the purpose of copyright is to incentivize creators while at the same time ensuring that at some point all culture is available, is it militaristic in one way and all loosey-goosey in another way, or is it all gravy? I mean, nothing should be more aggressively protected than the creative work that comes from your soul. Right? Not to mention, when someone makes bank at a hedge fund, they don't have to spend their paycheck within 14 years before it becomes a public resource. Just because something is a piece of culture, does that mean we have to treat it differently? Allowed at some point to be consumed or performed by everybody? Even, and maybe especially, the staff at Red Lobster? What do you guys think? Should Happy Birthday be protected by copyright? Let us know in the comments, and click on my mustache. Please. Maybe we could all learn a thing or two from those sandwiches. I mean, comments. Let's see what you guys had to say about Adventure Time. QWERTY7 and a couple other people brought up Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra as possible contenders for best animated series of all time. I would agree if there wasn't so much space between every series, but I do legitimately love that show. It's very good. On a related note, Otaku Minion brought up Animaniacs, which was one of my favorite shows growing up, but it's still kind of in the Looney Tunes slapstick area of cartoons and not really in the punch you in the feels area that Avatar: The Last Airbender and Adventure Time are in. So different, a little bit different. Red Llama 5, you're right, I don't know that many kids. But I did ask friends who have kids, and while their kids don't watch Adventure Time, they do. So that has to be worth something, right? Naruto Rocks 85 in Golden Image said that I was completely off base and that nostalgia has nothing to do with Adventure Time's popularity. They don't experience it even a little, which is totally fair. Can't discount personal experience. Sesleva, I think Lemongrab would be my favorite character too if the snow golem didn't exist, but he is also very scary. He's actually terrifying. The voice, it's the poking, weird. There's also a really great comment thread on Reddit, we'll put a link in the description, about the Adventure Time episode. The one thing that I kind of want to respond to is that nothing is ever just good. Goodness is a thing that happens within the viewer, not a characteristic of a piece of media. And so for us, it's really fun to sort of figure out where that is and why that happens. That's our kind of endlessly dissecting, I guess is the phrase to use. But you should check it out. It's a very good comment thread.